recording. Excellent. So welcome. This is March 10th, 2017. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is the second presentation of the 2017 seminar. And the whole idea is we're going to be talking about the specifics of the harmonic proportions of this shape, and specifically how this shape transforms into this shape. And so this is, I call this is like the shape of your chakras. Chakra means energy center or spinning wheel in Sanskrit. Nothing more fancy than that. And although in the, I call it the New Age community, like we could call it the community of seekers, questers, people that are looking for new knowledge, often chakras are represented as just a glowing ball of energy, but they are not merely a glowing ball of energy. There is a whole sophisticated structure to the energy and to the way that it flows. And this is how we learn to read the map of time. This is time, these are timelines. So you can be empowered if you know what these timelines are and what they're doing and where you're supposed to be going. So we're going to talk about that and about death and about ascended mastery. But the first thing we're going to begin with is the dimensions and what are the dimensions. So now I'm going to go to my wonderful whiteboard and just begin with here a big fat dot. That is the 0th dimension. And it is called the 0th dimension, not because it is less valuable than anything else. I was amazed when a person asked me that. Why is it 0? Is it worthless? No, but I'm amazed that people find the number 0 to mean worth nothing. It is 0 because it requires 0 amount of information to describe the location of anything that is at that place. I like to say it is like the house. Here I'm drawing a little house with a little roof on top of it. The 0th dimension is infinity. It is the house that literally every single thing that is in existence lives in that house. It is, we're going to put a little infinity sign up here. It is infinity. That means all possibilities, all probabilities. Can you believe that I have a visitor, a little girl neighbor is visiting me? Honey, I would love to play, but I'm doing a recording. Can we play another time?
Right here until they die.
Okay, it's going to be an hour though. And do they know that you came to visit me up here? Okay, then come back later. Bye-bye. Apologies, apologies, apologies. That's my lovely little neighbor girl, and I'd love to, she likes to learn about lasagna too. So we're doing, this is the 0th dimension. It is infinity, and it is also the convergence point of all of these timelines over here. So I'll move back to my face so you can see my face. Here, there we go. It is the convergence point of all of these timelines over here. So this is to distinguish from the singularity as science defines it. So it's not transhumanism's singularity, the idea of man and machine coming together at a certain point. It is close to science's definition of the singularity. That's where the fabric of space and time, and remember, science does not include consciousness as part of that recipe for the fabric, just space and time, like warp and weft, but nothing extra. That the fabric of space and time is stretched infinitely as it is at the center of a black hole. So at black hole, the idea is we've got an infinitely heavy bowling ball on top of the infinitely heavy, infinitely stretchy, rather, surface of the fabric of space and time, and it stretches that fabric down to a point, and that point is what is at the center. These are all fabric of reality being stretched into that center portion over here. So science describes the singularity as the place where all of the rules of space and time break down. The rules of physics break down. That's along the lines of what I'm describing. This is the place where everything resides. All possibilities, all probabilities, anything that could exist, anything that has ever existed, anything that will ever exist, all exists there. That's a really important definition. This is where all of our consciousness comes from. And it's not only the source, it's the destination, because you see my pencil, I'm coming away from the source and I'm circulating right back to it. It is also the destination. So we are supposed to be creating these big, giant, beautiful, unbroken time loops that come from the source and back to the source, and then flow around like this and back like this. I'll draw this out more, but I'm just giving you the basics here, and we're still going through the dimensions. The 0th dimension is the house that everybody lives in, and we all live there, overlapping all at the same time. We also get emanated from here, and that's called being alive. We get emanated into these beautiful biological multicellular organic containers, and we get emanated on the beat. Now I'm pretending that I'm like the great cosmic conductor. Tap, tap, tap. Now it is time for you to emanate, and you get emanated, and then that is called being born. It is called your consciousness flows from here, this place where everything is converging, outward to here, this place where everything is being experienced. So this is 0th dimension, okay? Let me go back to, let me also drink a little bit of water because I get going on doing so much drinking here. So much talking, I mean, I have to do a little bit of drinking. 0th dimension is a dot. And that dot is conscious also. These are not just abstractions like, you know, like a speck that doesn't have awareness. That is alive, that is aware. So the greatest leap that ever happened was when this little dot that contains everything had to, at a certain point, imagine what would happen if there was a little piece of me that was not here with me, but that was somewhere else. That, because this is supposed to be everything, and it's the only place to be, is the place of everything. The greatest leap that ever had to happen was when this little dot had to think, what would it be like if there was a part of me that wasn't actually here with me, but was somehow over here somewhere else? And the somewhere else could be an inch away, a centimeter away, a mile away, a million miles away, it doesn't matter. That was the most important leap, and then that created the first dimension. And since the first dimension was created, and the first dimension is a line, it's the first dimension it creates, it requires one piece of information to tell you the location of a point on a line, all right? That's why it's the first dimension. All the rest of the dimensions are built in the same exact way. It is all by going perpendicular to the original dimension. So this was the first, where we began rather at the 0th dimension. Any direction is perpendicular to that direction. Look, we could have gone in any possible direction. Now that we have created that line, we're going to go perpendicular to that line. This is easy. You guys all did geometry, I'm sure, in class. That is the second dimension. We've got a little 90-degree angle there. So perpendicular to a line is a plane. Now let me draw this in a different way. Here's a one-dimensional line. Now I'm drawing this, another line, another line, another line next to it. I'm lining them all up. These are like pencils lined up next to you on a desk. And that is how I've created a flat plane. Now we have a flat plane. This is like a piece of paper. This is the second dimension. And it's the second dimension because if I put this dot here, it requires both an X piece of information and a Y piece of information to determine the location of that dot on the plane. This is also geometry. Everyone's familiar with this. This is boring, all right? But I don't want you to be bored. Now we go perpendicular to the surface of the second dimension is up in this direction. That's easy. That's a little ant that jumps off the surface of the flat plane. Or it's like if you were an inchworm. Here, I'll draw it. You're a little inchworm, right? And you can only go along like this, like a little line. And you can't just jump up in that direction. But if you are a butterfly, you've achieved the adult winged form, and now all of a sudden you don't just crawl on the ground down here, you can jump off the surface of the ground and fly around. That is called gaining the third dimension. And I'm bringing this up because every time you gain a new dimension, you gain an additional degree of freedom. This is math talk, and I'm going to say that over and over again, and it's just repetition is how we learn. So when we go from being a two-dimensional being that is stuck to the surface of the flat plane into being a three-dimensional being that can now fly around like a butterfly, we gain an additional degree of freedom. This is what this is all about. So the flat plane becoming a third-dimensional object or experience means we're gonna, let me change colors. Now I'm gonna line up another plane on top of that plane. Oh, it's like this, kind of like playing cards being stacked on top of each other. Here's another playing card on top. Got it? I'm stacking up these flat planes like playing cards until, what do I get? Get another color here. We get a box. And we are all so very, very familiar with boxes and the third dimension. This is a cube. Here, we live in boxes. We live in boxes. Almost all of our houses are box shaped. And we have truly, sorry, that's so drawn so hastily. We have truly mastered the box. We are very, very familiar with it. So this is the third dimension. And I'm sure you're so bored because you live in the third dimension. You're totally experts at this. We have this little dot here in the third dimension. It requires an X, a Y, and a Z piece of information to tell us what is there. Now I'm going to ask you a harder question that's not going to be boring. What is perpendicular to the third dimension? And this is hard because it's not something you can point to. We are now no longer in the levels of reality that are spatial, like creating space. We are now in the levels of reality that are all about time. So when someone comes to my studio and I say, okay, we've done up to the third dimension now. Where's the fourth dimension? What's perpendicular to the third dimension? Point to it. That's a hard question because they can't point to it unless I have a clock or something like that and say, point to a clock. It's time. So let me erase a little bit here, clear all of these things out, and let me draw a box. This is the third dimension that we reside within. And here's you and me inside of there, a little person in the third dimension. So perpendicular to the third dimension is the fourth dimension, which is a bunch of boxes lined up like this. And all of them have a little version of you. But look, this one's got both arms up. This one's got one arm up. This one's got both arms down. This is, let's say, who you are at 1 p.m. This is who you are at 1:01 p.m. Here you are at 1:02 p.m. This is the fourth dimension. These are train cars of reality. Change my color here. These are like train cars of reality. Each one of these is a moment. And the moments are not actually a minute long. They're actually much, much shorter. They're much shorter than a second. They're a microsecond, and they're actually at the Planck length, the tiniest measured distance that we can measure distance and still call it distance. So these are versions of your body. This is a version of your body with a molecular structure and an amount of vitality that it has at that moment in time. But we are not all in the same body all at the same time, because your consciousness, let's say this red dot is your consciousness or your viewpoint. That viewpoint goes from this body and then it jumps into the next train car and then it lives in this body. And then when that moment is over, it jumps into this body and you keep on jumping and jumping and jumping. And that is the time vortex. I'll show you my face so that you can see this better. That is the time vortex. This is describing your pathway or your trajectory through time so that you can be an empowered pilot or co-pilot as opposed to a lumpen passenger that is just sitting there not knowing what's going on with you. So back to what is the fourth dimension over here. So the fourth dimension, now I'm just going to draw these little simplified boxes, 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 boxes. It's a line. You've got a dot, and that dot moves forward through time. And that dot, let's call this 0, that's birth. And it moves forward, 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 forward through time until we get to the end of your timeline, which would be considered death. This is this sketch that I just drew is a very simplified linear explanation of what this is. And this is the fourth dimension, okay? So this is what I'm trying to talk about when people talk about higher dimensional beings, fourth dimensional beings, living in the third dimension, living in the fourth dimension. The truth is we are all already living in the fourth dimension. Is my body moving? If my body is moving through time, I'm in the fourth dimension. You are already in the fourth dimension. We are all already fourth dimensional beings. But the challenge is for most people, the transfer from this moment of consciousness to the next, to the next, to the next is not intentional. Mostly our trajectory is not a controlled, intentional trajectory. And that's why people fly into experiences of disease and death. Death is not inevitable. So now, let me clear things out. And I'll draw the bottom quadrant of this that I drew in last month's introductory course. This is the time vortex. So this is that beginning point 0 with birth right there at that moment. And changing colors here to a better color, you can see, there we go. This membrane over here, this is the flowing membrane of death. And that is what flows outward from the source. This is that source, that convergence place where everything comes from and comes to. Well, death actually flows, like these are arrows flowing away from there, okay? And the way that your trajectory through time moves, here's you, let's say you're this black dot over here, you begin down here at 0 and you move upward, upward, upward on these little dots until you hit the membrane of death. So what I had drawn linearly and laterally, beginning with your birth here and moving over here, and then you hit the membrane of death here, we are now understanding that this is going around this time vortex. And this time vortex is a simplification. The timelines don't actually go in straight lines like that. They actually go in curved spirals all around like this, okay? So we will get more into the exact pathways that you take as an abstract being flying through the map of time. But first I want to get into the fifth dimension, okay? So back to This is the same thing. This keeps going point line plane, point line plane. And I'll just go back to my face for a minute so that you can see me better. I highly recommend the video work of Rob Bryanton. That's Bryanton. He has some excellent YouTubes that talk all about this point line plane postulate of how to understand the dimensions. So we were at the fourth dimension, a bunch of train cars. This is your zero birth, and you go all the way up until death. And it's a line, just like that first one-dimensional line that we ever created. So what we're going to do now is make a whole bunch of timelines lined up next to each other. And this is, I'm using a little bit of perspective. Now we're going to draw a time plane. Now we have a time plane, and the time plane is filled with these little boxes that are three-dimensional moments, and they make an entire matrix. And the matrix has warp and weft. This is the fabric of time, time plane. All right, so keep that in mind. We just drew a time plane, and that's the fourth dimension. But if we stack up a bunch of time planes, here, look what I'm drawing. Here's a flat plane with another plane on top of it, and another plane on top of it, and another plane on top of it, just like stacking up the playing cards. What do we get? We get a time cube. Look at that. Time cube is the fifth dimension. But I do not want you to be too literal, because the fifth dimension is an area of uncollapsed waveforms and possibilities and probabilities that have not yet been created into things that we can actually experience. So the best way that I can describe all this, well, I'll go back to the whiteboard. I know I flip back and forth. I'm not trying to make you dizzy or whatever. Let's say this is your timeline, and these are all, like, this is a long timeline that moves forward through time. And these are all slices of time that are moments. And let's say this is like a slice of bread. And each one of these moments or slices is a slice of a very long, skinny French bread, okay? Well, the fifth dimension is the bakery where that long, skinny French bread is created. I don't want you or anyone else, when we're beginning to use this impeccable language, to imagine that the fifth dimension is a place that is inhabited by beings that are anthropomorphic, like having a face and two arms and two legs, because it's not. The beings that occupy that level of reality are abstractions. This has everything to do with when people come along and they say, a fifth dimensional being, talk to me. What did he look like? Well, he looked like, you know, a giant blue bird, or he looked like, you know, whatever, a potato chip, or he looked like a mushroom. Like, they don't look like anything like that. They look like uncollapsed waveforms, because the fifth dimension is the area of possibility and probability where the ingredients for reality are put together. That's like saying the fifth dimension is the bakery, where you've got the flour, the water, the yeast, and everything else, the equipment, the ovens, to turn it, to make dough and turn it into physical timelines of bread. So going back to what this fifth dimension is, we've got a time plane that's made of third dimensional cubes, and we've got it stacked up and stacked up and stacked up. So I'm sorry, I'm drawing this so hastily and so sloppily. Forgive me. I'm actually good at drawing, but just sometimes I'm going too fast and trying to speak at the same time. That's a very hastily constructed time cube. But you can understand this is the fifth dimension, and it's created by these many interacting layers of time. That's what I'm trying to get across. You think of it just like fabric, and you think of it as having layers, and each one of those layers, here's a different color, interact with each other. So now I'm pretending this is like a needle with a thread. I am now sewing down through all of those layers. Now I'm sewing up through all of those layers. Now I'm sewing down through all of those layers. That light blue thread that I just created, that's a thread of events. Now we are beginning to understand how this is a living, interactive, three-dimensional time embroidery. The events that happen on one layer of time interact with the events on the other layer of time, because it's like trapeze artists. You know, you've got one guy over here and one guy over here, and this guy swings to the middle, and this guy comes on over and catches him. This is all moving and interactive. So this is all about your life. Your life is not just your life and the things, the energy that you emanate and what you're flying through and swimming through interacts with everyone else. This is why I say you're not just in your own private kiddie pool of your life, of your mind. You're interacting with this whole giant cosmic symphony. And if we get to be good musicians, the symphony thrives. So the fifth dimension, this is a time cube. And then just as we did in the previous level, we add string those cubes together. Here's a cube, here's another cube, here's another cube, here's another cube, and they're connected together with little dots of integument, and they go on like a train car. So now we have another line, and this line is the 6th dimension. And what that means is we are looking at the change of the map over time. So if what I'm circling here in blue, this idea of embroidering the many layers of time, it doesn't stay in one way. It's not like, oh, I sewed those loops and then they stayed in that specific format. I sewed those loops and then I unsewed them and I sewed them in a different way. Just drinking water. Or another good analogy is saving different versions of the term paper of reality. Like if you're writing a thesis, you're writing a term paper, and first you just write the very general unedited version, then you go back and you save it on your computer, and then you go back and you edit it, and you take out this part's too much, this part is not right, this part is misspelled, and then you save that version. Well, saving these different versions is like what this 6th dimensional realm is like. I just highlighted that's one version of reality, but then I tore out the threads that I didn't like and I created a new version of reality. It changed to that. Oh, then something bad happened. Someone got a disease, someone died, and I had to change the embroidery. I made it into that version of reality. So, and go back to my face. This is all to give you the perspective of what you will experience as a higher dimensional being and the perspective of a higher dimensional being. We're learning this impeccable language of color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone so that we can talk with beings that don't speak English and perceive time very differently than we do, because the future is not set in stone. The future is constantly being upgraded, constantly being changed. The thesis of reality is constantly being rewritten and saved in a new format. So this is also why I will now save you all a lot of money. Instead of ever paying anyone to predict the future for you, you're paying a person who looks into a crystal globe, paying a person who will read your chicken gizzards, or any sense of like that is not effective, because there are so many futures radiating outward. Going back to this so I can show you, like here's the moment, present moment now, and all of these are future timelines emanating forward from the present moment now. And let's say you pay me, I'm gonna pay you $5 and I want to know what's gonna be in the future. Well, I'm going to tell you what I see on this future that I just highlighted in blue. You will have a cup of coffee today, but that doesn't necessarily have to happen to you, because you could change which future you are on by changing your direction. And now all of a sudden you're going over here and you don't have that cup of coffee, and you say, Aurora, I paid you money and you told me this thing would happen, but it didn't actually happen. That's because you weren't on that timeline that I predicted. So now we're beginning to understand the difficulty with prophecies. I will tell you, since the invention of the flying rainbow lasagna in 2001, all prophecies are moot. This is how we change the possibilities of time. This is how we tear out the threads of the embroidery that you don't like and draw the thread that you do like. And that's what it means to gain an additional degree of freedom. You do not have to simply say, oh, my genes are shaped like this. That means I'm going to have these diseases and die in this way. No, no, no. You don't have to have those events in your life. You can flying rainbow lasagna, which is like having a pencil with an eraser, so that you can change your events. And the whole idea is, I know we're only up to the 6th dimension, but I feel like I need to draw this a little bit. The whole idea is, this is a simplification because this is the time vortex at the bottom, but remember we have one that's over here, we have one that's up here, we have one that's over here like this, but I'm just focusing on the one that's down here. That you are flying through time and you are constantly being refined. Let me change colors here. The idea is you're moving from train car of reality to train car of reality. The little dots that connect you are the movements of your DNA, and that you can choose, how do you move from this timeline to this timeline? If you're like, oh my goodness, I'm moving towards the membrane of death, how do I not hit that membrane? How do I jump to this one over here and not hit that membrane? The answer is by transforming your genetic structure. Your DNA is the integument that ties you from train car of reality to the next train car. So remember that diagram with your body of 101, 102. It's the dance of your DNA that makes you jump from train car to train car to train car. And let's say your train car 102 has a body in it that has cancer. You don't want to jump into that train car. You want to jump into a different train car. So now we get into how can you navigate reality? This is about understanding the map and being empowered so that you can navigate reality. So we got up to the 6th dimension, which is a bunch of train cars that are tied together like this and that make a line like this. And then up from there, we do more lines of these train cars that are made up of train cars. And now we have another plane, and that's the 7th dimension. And the 7th dimension gets stacked up with the 8th dimension. Another set of planes stacked up. And that makes the 8th dimension until we get, so wait, 8th dimension is another cube. And then we stack up all of those cubes into another line, and that's the 9th dimension. And this is, it's like saying, how many times has reality changed? How many times has history changed? All right, now we've got another train car that moves forward like this. This keeps going endlessly. I said at the beginning of this presentation that that 0th dimension, that initial dot, moving one step in any direction and creating the 1st dimension, that was the crucial leap of consciousness. You could call it the quantum leap. It was the leap that had to happen so that all of these other things could happen. But once you learn, like, oh, all I have to do is move perpendicular to the realm that I am presently in, then you just keep moving perpendicular, and you can do that endlessly. So although we begin at the 0th dimension, we can move into levels of complexity as we add more and more and more dimensions that are infinite. We don't have to stop at the 10th or the 11th or the 12th dimension. We can keep on going infinitely. Let me just drink a little bit of juice over here and then get going on how the information flows around this shape. And check my time. We're doing really good. So we started out with the understanding that this convergence point here, this is the 0th dimension, and we all emanate from there, and we come out here into reality, and then we all emanate back to there. I'm gonna do a drawing. Oh, first, let's do more pictures. Hold on a second here. I have all of my photos all meticulously prepared for this class. Let's do it. Okay, so starting with, so this is the basic setup of how the chakras or energy centers of your body are nested and proportional. That was a terrible sentence, but I know that you're understanding what I'm talking about. The red is always the longest wavelength. Here, let me draw on this, good. Red is always the longest wavelength, and that's down there. Orange is 1/2. Yellow is 1/3, green is 1/4. This light blue color is 1/5. This dark blue or indigo color is 1/6, and this violet color is 1/7. This violet chakra or energy center is always going to be 1/7 the size of this. These are like basic proportions of your body. So if this, in my paintings, what I do is I make the red chakra or energy center is always at 12 inches or whatever is the basic increment that I'm doing. And then this orange circle is always 6, and this yellow circle is always 4. This green one is 3. This turquoise one is 2.7. This blue one is 2. And this violet one works out to about 1.68, which is wonderful because of that phi proportion of 1 to 1.68. And I chose these increments, these integer increments, because it makes it easy for me to make my artwork. Here, well, I'll switch around. It makes it easier for me to make my artwork. This is the 12-inch circle here, and we've got the 6-inch circle here and the 4-inch circle here, and that's consistent throughout all of the paintings that I do. And that's not by accident. That is that interdimensional language that we are establishing here. So that there's more, don't worry. Inside of each one of those energy centers, you have 7 layers. So you've got your entire body, your entire non-physical and physical body, has 7 major energy centers. And then within those energy centers, you have 7 layers. So this is a close-up of the red energy center. I'm highlighting it in red, but you can see within that layer, you've also got orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, okay? And all of these, all of these are like little compasses. So when we look at this simplified drawing that I'm making here, please imagine that this purple line that I'm drawing, that this is like a compass. So this compass is perfectly aligned with infinity. And that infinity, again, is that singularity. It's like saying, if my pen is that purple line that I just drew, it's going directly to infinity. It is in perfect alignment. Now I will draw other colors that are not in perfect alignment. So this is like, here is a compass that's pointing in this direction, or it's pointing in this direction, or it's pointing in this direction. And what that means is this chakra or energy center, instead of being perfectly up and down like this, is canted to the side, or canted to the side, or canted to the side. And each energy center, let's do a very simplified drawing of what it is, like simplified drawing. Each energy center has 7 layers inside of it. And you can have one of your outer layers with the compass needle going in this direction. Then one of the inner layers is going slightly in this direction. The inner layer is going slightly in this direction. You have 7 different needles or compass needles that are directional antennae or whatever within each directional antenna. This is how complex this is in terms of moving through time. And let's also talk about how energy flows around this shape. So I'm going to draw, this is a cross section of the shape that I'm showing you here, and we have 2 interlocking ones there at 90-degree angles. The energy doesn't simply flow outward from the center here, like we're going out. This would be considered a physical reality, like where we have coalesced. Light has coalesced into this dense level, and it is now matter that we can feel and sense, and then it becomes less dense and goes back around here, back to the beginning. That is a simplification. So now I'll draw I'm just erasing a little bit of spot over here so that we can, oh my goodness, get back into here, choosing the right color, and here. So now this is a giant, sorry, trying to draw properly. Here we go. That's the first layer. You don't go back directly to the source here. I should draw this better. Sorry that I'm messing around so much. We begin here, all right? And circulate around out into the physical realm and then come back, but we don't go directly back to the source. This is like a doorway. It's like a aperture or a portal. And you go through that doorway and that portal, and you don't come back out at the source. You go into the next level, which would be orange. And it's half the size of red. I'm using yellow. They don't have an orange on here. You go back to the door, and then you don't go back to the source. You have to go through the portal, and the portal brings you to the next level of reality, which is yellow. And then you go back to the door, but you don't go back to the source. You go through the next level of reality, which is green. And you keep on spiraling closer and closer and closer every time you go through that door, until finally you do go here, look, that one, and then through the violet one, and then you finally go back to the singularity and to the source. This is telling you about how energy flows through the various energy centers of your body. These are the energy centers of your body. Let me show you a picture that will hopefully make more sense, because I've been doing this all without actually showing you how it relates to your physical anatomy. And just want to show you a nice big picture. Here we go. So these are all of the energy centers on your body. And energy comes from, well, it comes in both directions. Let's say if we say this is the source, this dot over here, it comes from there and it flows through your violet chakra, then it flows through your indigo chakra, then it flows through your light blue chakra, then through green, then through yellow, then through orange, and then finally through red. And then of course stimulation comes from the outer realm, from the physical world, from like that pathway that I just drew is the stimulation that comes from the non-physical world. That's like plugging into the power plant, plugging into God, getting information from the source. It's an abstract realm. The abstract energy comes into you and it flows through your energy centers, and it flows through you like a water wheel, like an old-fashioned mill that would mill water, and or like a pachinko game, like in through these little gears, it flows through you and then goes out into the physical realm where we have our physical body. But that's not the end of the journey, because we're out here in the physical realm having stimulation, like, oh, I feel something touching me. Oh, I'm eating something. Oh, I'm perceiving light. Here's a different color. Those stimulations go in the opposite direction. They go from the physical to here, trying to draw here. From the physical, I don't know why my pen's not working, to the emotional, and then to the intellectual, and then to the heart, and then through communication, and then through insight, and then through your connection to the divine, and then back to the source. So this is the idea. It's a two-way road. It's a two-way refinery where we have energy coming into us from the abstract realm, circulating and coalescing throughout us, and then we send that energy back. That's the crucial thing, because for a very long time, humanity has been cut off from that cell phone broadcast and not able to do real-time broadcasts. Humanity has been storing everything up like on a giant hard drive. I don't know where my hard drive is, but imagine that's your life. You go through your whole entire life and you hand in your hard drive at the end of your life. And this is what that looks like. Back to the whiteboard. This is the time vortex. Here's the time vortex. Here's the zero. Here's birth. These are the membranes of death. So here I am traveling through my whole life. Oh, look, ... but I'm not connected to the divine, ... And this me here, this version of me, that's the accumulated knowledge of me as I flew through time, as I did my different life experiences, but I never told the divine source what I was experiencing the whole time, because I was cut off. We have been genetically manipulated to be cut off from that real-time broadcast. So then this is like it's like my hard drive. This is like my recorded accumulation of ideas and experiences. And when I reconnect with this membrane of death, this is the connection to the source. And it's like too late you find out, or too late the source finds out, oh, this is what you've been going through in your whole entire life. So the idea for our lives was never that we were meant to come here and hit the membrane of death over and over and fill up the membrane of death with these are our final moments, the final denouement, the last minute of your life. That's like a snapshot. Let's draw. My little thing went down. It's too hard for me to find it here. I don't know why I can't change colors now effectively. My pen's not working right. But anyway, there are little tiny versions of you on all of these membranes, little tiny version of you, except they're all the versions of you that are dead. And they are all lined up on there. But that is not what it was intended to be. That is not how our divine creator created us. We were meant to be, imagine if we started off here and created a wonderful pathway that goes up in between this aperture. This is like a wormhole or a direction out of there. That's what is so special about the singularity. That's how you get out of here. This is a doorway. I'm telling you, I'm giving you the map to get out of here. This is the doorway. This is how you do it. And you do it by realigning your chakras into being alignment with the right timeline. And you do that by transforming your DNA. And in order to transform your DNA, you use the flying rainbow lasagna as a tool. So this is the whole idea. This is the timeline of an ascended master. That here, maybe can I do this? There we go. Oh my goodness, that was so hard. I couldn't move my little thing like to change the colors. There we go. All much better now. Sorry. This is the timeline of the ascended master. All right, over there. That is who you are when you're in perfect alignment with the source, and that's what we were intended to do our life experience in that level of alignment. And we were never meant to have to interact with this membrane of death and create all of this. So you could now think of this membrane of death as the astral realm, the dream realm, the realm of residues. It is the realm that is occupied by occupiers of the interstices, or the beings that did not live well. They were not emanated, and this is lesson 18. This is the galactic history stuff. There's a whole civilization that has been created in that area of the membrane, and no one is supposed to live there. It's supposed to be a transition point, like a hallway between rooms or areas of your house where you move from here and go over to here through that transition area. But there are beings like squatters that have set up camp in those transition areas, and they have been there for longer than recorded human history. And their civilizations are extensive, and they don't want to change. And they catch people as they enter into the membrane of death, and they will siphon off energy and change your trajectory through time. So now let's get into this. And I usually, in previous levels and lessons, would wait until further, like lesson 18, we'll do many more weeks before. We don't have the time to do that. We need to know about what's going on right now. So when you die, when you hit this membrane over here, there are, changing my color, there are actual beings that live there, and there's actually 2 levels to the membrane. You have one that is going in towards the source, and you have one that is going away from the source, and it's supposed to be like, hot and cold. But the point is, you're supposed to circulate around back to this direction, and then, try again and try again and try again. And what the occupiers of the interstices do is they inhibit the flow of energy in this area. It's supposed to be like a waterfall where the soul or consciousness can be unmade and then flow back to the beginning and then try it again. And instead, the flow of that consciousness has been impeded. So there's 2 things that are happening here. The first thing is you're supposed to only take this journey that is on this purple line. You're not supposed to take any of the other timelines, but we are being forced to take the other timelines. And then the other thing that is going on is, instead of just circulating around like we're circulating, we're exploring all of these other timelines and all these other iterations. It's not even that quick and that easy, because when you get to the actual interstice, when you get here, a lot of the time you're waylaid in your journey, and that is being stuck. It's like fatty deposits of the cosmos, that we are like energy flowing is like blood flowing in a body, or energy flowing like in a metabolism. And that if there is not enough metabolism going on, we are getting these fatty deposits, like the coronary arteries of the heart of the cosmos are being filled up. That's what those interstices are. That's what, let's get into what is an ascended master, because I want to talk about what we wanted to talk about. What are 5th dimensional beings? What are ascended masters? An ascended master would be anyone who once was born like a human being in a body like you and I have, and they managed to make it to this timeline and exit the wormhole, and they live in infinity. So in ascended master, I would define as a person who has been in the physical corporeal realm and who has transcended this level of the material world. But of course, that's not the end of the journey, because you then enter into the next time vortex, which is shaped like this. And then you enter the next time vortex, which is shaped like this. All right. So ascended masters are the version of the term paper that is complete. Like, we've done all of this exploration, all of these edits, we fixed all of the typos and spelling mistakes, and then this is the final version of you, who you are as a person, your personality, your thoughts, your characteristics, your behaviors through time. That is worth saving. And saving, I am not referring to like a biblical literalist description here. I'm referring it like saving on the computer. Like, we are saving that you are an eternal being. You've made it to that level of refinement. Now let's talk about what death is. Like, I defined death as being this membrane, this membrane that is flowing over here. But death, we can really now describe as, I'm going to draw another time vortex, but that is in a different color. Death is about the area of coincidence or overlapping between 2 people's time vortices. So I know, maybe let me just fix that a little bit if I do it more like this. There we go. So this area over here where I'm drawing these timelines, that is the area of coincidence where these 2 people's lives overlap. And that means that those are the places where their timelines interact. Here, this person in the red vortex person has these blue timelines, all right? And the green vortex person has these purple timelines. And you can see where timelines interact, where they overlap, and where they don't overlap. So here's one simplification here. Like, if we have one purple timeline that's like this, and you have a blue timeline next to it like this, what that means is that this blue person died and this violet person continued onward. That's what we're really talking about here. We're looking at the areas of overlapping. Let me change to a different color so that you can see what's going on here. So let's say this green vortex, let's say that's a person that I love. We'll call him like whatever, Harry. I love this guy, Harry. But Harry and my timeline and Harry's timeline only overlap in this particular area. And oops, I want to rewind. And there are some versions of reality where, look, here, this is Harry has died, but I'm still alive. My blue timeline is longer than Harry's purple timeline. Here's a different version. Harry is the purple timeline and I'm the blue timeline. I died before Harry died. I'm going through this. This is the advanced level stuff. I hope that you're understanding it. And it's also one of the first times that I've tried to present it. I hope that I'm presenting it in a way that makes sense. Like if we look at this little area over here and we have expanded it to this magnification over here, the violet timeline is longer than the blue timeline. And that means that this person keeps moving through time when this person has hit the membrane of death. And it also exists in the opposite direction, where over here, there is a long blue timeline and a short purple timeline. So all of this means, what I'm trying to say with all of this, oh, there we go. What I'm trying to say with all of this is that when you experience, when you're submerged in reality, you're submerged in the fourth dimension like we are, and you know someone who dies, that person has left your timeline, but they are still traveling on a different level of reality on their own timeline. But the issue is the areas of coincidence where your timelines overlap. You no longer have any more areas of coincidence where your timelines overlap. So now I'm going to go draw this again. I hope that it will be more visible if I draw it in another way. Here's one timeline. We'll just keep it simple. The red vortex, and here are red timelines on the red vortex, and here's blue timeline. And here are the blue timelines. So now I think you can see what I'm talking about right over here, that these are two perfect like mirror images. On this timeline over here, blue stays alive for a lot longer than red. On this timeline over here, red stays alive for a lot longer than blue. And look, on this timeline over here, it looks like they both hit the membrane of death relatively at the same time. So let's use this as a practical example in your life. Let's say you have a friend from college, right? And you went to college together and they die when they're age 21 and you continue onward and live until you're age 69. That would be because your timeline went longer than their timeline. But they actually have transferred their consciousness, because when I showed that being in alignment like this or being in alignment like this, that is all about transferring your consciousness. And our entire journey through the time field is a refinery process of going from being out of alignment and hitting the membrane of death to slowly realigning ourselves and being in an alignment like this, where we no longer hit the membrane of death. And that is called ascension. So really, if I were to draw what all of us look like as ascended masters, here's an ascended master. Here's a different colored ascended master. It's tough. I have to use a lot of colors here. Here's a different colored ascended master. And what you'll note is that all of the ascension timelines, this one I'm highlighting, this one I'm highlighting, this one I'm highlighting, they don't overlap. They do not overlap at all. So if these are, let's say, 3 college friends, these 3 college friends could all become ascended masters. But what it would look like to red, it would look like, oh, green and blue have already died, but I continued onward for eternity. And what it would look like to green is, oh, look, red and blue have already died, but I'm continuing onward. And of course, same thing for blue. Blue would say, I'm still alive, but green and red have died. So I'm trying to give you the higher dimensional perspective on death, that death is really a transferring of consciousness from timeline to timeline. and that the people that we have in our lives that, you know, we love and that they've died, they have not exited the time field. They are still alive, circulating through the periphery and being refined to the point of being an ascended master. And all of those ascended master timelines, I should draw it like this, that they all converge. Here's infinity. They all converge at infinity. So they all, here's red converges at infinity, green converges at infinity, and blue all converge at infinity. So their timelines, like at a certain point, you're out here in the time field and you're like, oh, all of my college friends have died. But when you actually get to here, you're like, oh, look, all of my college friends that I thought were dead actually just exited my level of the time field, but they continued their own journey into ascended mastership or masterhood. And that is how we all met each other in infinity. So let me just check my time super fast here. Oh, got about 15 more minutes. We're doing good. This is how we can understand, like, let's say, I love the music of Jimi Hendrix. What a brilliant, genius musician. But he died on my experience of my timeline that I'm in when he was 27 years old. But I know that he didn't just die when he was 27 years old. That would be like being at this direction. That he went through he circulated back around and tried again and tried again and tried again. And that he had many other life experiences leading up to ascended mastership. And that there's a version of Jimi Hendrix that is actually an ascended master. And that is the term paper that got saved. So the term paper that got saved of Jimi Hendrix is not the version of him that tragically died when he was, 27 from some misadventure. The ascended master version of him would have gotten off of the floor and had more experiences and made more music and been refined more until the point where that version of him and his characteristics is ready to be saved, like it's a complete project. And so death is not like you've made a mistake or done something wrong. It just signals that you are incomplete as a project, as a life project. And we are all trying to complete our life projects. And when we do, it's like all of the time tendrils fit together perfectly. That's what all those convergence points all fit together. This is a living time embroidery. So when I do the right things in my life, I'm sending out energy that affects everyone else, and that affects their trajectories through time, and that heals the time field. This is what this is all about, healing the time field. Now I'm going to get into the flying rainbow lasagna and adding an additional degree of freedom. So ordinarily, we're shaped like these toroidal energy fields, and I do this simple cross section like this, right? And the cross section also has another chakra that is at 90 degrees to it, that's like that. And that it has this convergence point will make it a big giant purple dot right over here in the middle. And that means that you've got these timelines that are essentially going like this, that are, I want to say set in stone. They're like, that's the way that they are. We can't change what that is. But when we flying rainbow lasagna, what we do is take this shape and imagine that I'm now moving it up and down very fast. This is not just this shape with no context. That's the idea of science that says, oh, the Big Bang. Big Bang is the super dense, super condensed matter and energy of the world, which is the 0th dimension, spontaneously expanding outward and creating this bubble that we occupy as experiences of time. And the surface of the bubble is the moment now, and the interior of the bubble is the past. This is science's model of the Big Bang. But according to that model, there's nothing outside. There's no context. It's just a bubble with like a vacuum or a void around the outer edge of it. And you're on the surface of the now. It's like saying science does not formally recognize the future, but the future does exist, as I said to you earlier, as a series of uncollapsed waveforms. It's the bakery. Oh, hello, Mike. It's good to see you. The bakery where the bread of the 4th dimension is baked. So in order to move this up and down very fast, you actually have to have a place to move it up and down. The place is the next highest dimension. The place is the 5th dimension. So we take these 4th dimensional timelines and we start to vibrate them up and down very fast And that is what creates the flying rainbow lasagna shape. I'm going to draw it for you now. And it is about superposition. So we've got one position of the chakra shapes, shows it down here. And one position of the chakra shapes shows it up here. I'm drawing this so super sloppy, but you're going to get the idea anyway. And then we can see, let's make just some dots. Let's say these dots are like genes, dot, 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 and dot, dot, dot over here, right? Well, those dot, 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 that can be in that position there. But then when we jump it to the next highest position, those dots can be in a different shape. I am not describing this very well. Dot, dot, dot over there and dot, dot, dot over there. So what I'm trying to say is that we can overlap two different versions of reality. We've got this version of reality down here. And when I jump it up here, it's a different version of reality. And I can overlap the two in order to rearrange genes and rearrange events. This is tough. Tough to draw is what I'm trying to say, tough to express. This is the whole like critical integument of the flying rainbow lasagna and how you rewrite your genes. Let's say your genes are like red, green, blue, black. That's an order that some of your genetic material is in when it's in this lower positional state. But let's say that when it's in the higher positional state, it can be in this order instead. Blue, red, green, and then black. And we can even calculate the difference between the two. We can calculate like the way that my right eye and my left eye calculate the minute difference of reality between the two and create a, like they calculate the difference and then create a average of the two and say that is what reality is. That's what we're doing with the flying rainbow lasagna. Moving this up and down and creating essentially two different viewpoints of reality. So the first thing is understanding that this time vortex exists in a context, that it's in, the future does exist. The future is a set of uncollapsed waveforms. And when we begin to vibrate this up and down, we're vibrating this level of possibilities into a new level of possibilities. This is what I mean when I say in the math speak. When you add an additional dimension, you add an additional degree of freedom. This is your personal individual allegory to the little ant or the little worm that jumps off of the flat leaf and becomes an adult winged butterfly. Instead of plodding along through every single possible iteration and having to hit the membrane of death over and over and over, you can become your higher dimensional form, which means this is jumping up and down. Put it in a context and make it jump up and down in that context. And that is how you can rearrange what these genes are saying. I'll draw it like words. Let's say that in one version of your genes, the lower version, that's what your genes are saying. But then let's say in the higher dimensional version, I would rearrange all those letters, but you know, let's say. All right, that's a very quick anagram. It doesn't actually say or mean anything, but the whole point is we've taken the same letters and we rearranged them when we are jumping up and down. We are taking the version of your genes and your iterations and your codons that are in this position down here. And when they jump up here, they're in a slightly different position. And we can begin then rearranging according to these two different positions. I feel like I keep on saying this and like the words are not actually giving the meat and potatoes of what I'm trying to give. These two aspects of the flying rainbow lasagna are oppositional, but they are not dualistic. We've got energy and entropy. And these two different positions are positions of this same singularity. This is the 0th dimension, and there's only one of it. And when it jumps back and forth, there's still only one of it. So it's still infinity. That's still where we all live as infinity. But when infinity jumps back and forth between these two positions, it's like my left eye and my right eye. They have slightly different viewpoints of reality. They're still both my eye, and they're still both connected to my brain. So this viewpoint of reality is total energy. That's what I described earlier, that zeroth dimension, the presence of everything. And this vortex is the level of reality that is the loss of all energy. It's total entropy. So again, these are science words, even though I'm not a science person, but the idea is they are opposites, but they are part of the same whole. So there's the meta, which is the lasagna, and then there are these two subsets, entropy and energy. And when the singularity jumps back and forth between these two positions, it is jumping back and forth between these two different qualitative characteristics. Here I have all of the energy in the world. Here I have none of the energy in the world. I'm jumping back and forth. It's like I'm looking at my right eye, I'm looking at my left eye, right eye, left eye, right eye, left eye. And that is a new viewpoint, a new approach to the world. And dependent upon how fast, in what way we are jumping back and forth, we can rearrange our genes. And in a more practical sense, and I'll just do this very fast, and this is lesson 11. Okay, also, this will all be archived for anyone who couldn't tune in at this time. What I'm talking about with all of this, and this is kind of the morphed together beginner and advanced stuff, is all referring to the recorded lessons that I have as the homework or the backstory. So if what I'm saying makes sense to you, that's wonderful. If what I'm saying doesn't make sense to you, or you'd like to learn more, there's a series of recorded homework lessons that you should definitely tune into in order to get the complete backstory of what this is all about. So I'm trying to present this in a way that is not jumping around, and that is comprehensive, so that you can actually apply it to your life. But I have lesson 11 that is about applying this shape to your actual specific DNA. And it has to do with supercoiling. About 5 more minutes, and then I'll end the recording and I'll open everything up to questions and comments. Supercoiling is what happens when you take the 2 threads of DNA, twist them together, you get like one yarn, and then you keep on twisting that yarn, and it coils and coils and coils. And at a certain point, let's look for my picture. I think I've got a photo of this all prepared. At a certain point, it creates toroidal, yes, energy structures. Good. So this is not my original drawing here, but you can see that the DNA gets, where's that? Here we go. Here is a yarn of thread being created out of the DNA. Here is that yarn being wrapped around histones. Those are like spools of a spool of thread. And here you can see they are making these loops, and these loops are like toroids or donut shapes. Those loops that I just showed you going down the spiral of DNA are exactly like this yellow sculpture here. Now, that's another one of these good math things here. Go back to my face. Just like in math, any place where you have a torus, you can add an additional dimension and turn it into a flying rainbow lasagna and add an additional degree of freedom. So what that means is you can take your DNA that is ordinarily toroidal when it is supercoiled at that level, you can add a vibration to it, which adds an additional degree of freedom, which makes it have a new shape. And this is my kind of simplified diagram that shows that we've got the 2 pieces of yarn split apart, which is how they usually are created for RNA replication. And instead of collapsing back together, we have a flying rainbow lasagna holding those pieces of genetic material apart. This flying rainbow lasagna, it's jumping back and forth. So yeah, you can see me in my little picture down here. I'm jumping back and forth with my little white pencil, jumping back and forth. And when I'm doing that jumping back and forth motion, that motion creates a stability so that the genes don't collapse. This shape, it's a movement, it's a moving shape. It's constantly jumping and dancing and twirling. That gives it a type of stability, that it can be used as a placeholder within your genes to hold them in a new shape, in a new format, so that the words of your genes can be rearranged into a new format. This is what I try to say. With a pencil with an eraser, or whatever, the capacity to copy and erase. I could take any raw material, like the 2004 Chevy Malibu handbook for my car, and I could rearrange it into a masterpiece. It could become the King James Bible, James Joyce's Ulysses, The Wizard of Oz, whatever book I wanted to write it into. Your genes, as they were given to you by your ancestors and your parents in society, that's like the raw material of the handbook for your car. And if you have a flying rainbow lasagna, this is like a pencil with an eraser that you can use to erase out the words that you don't want, like, oh, let's erase out that cancer, let's erase out that diabetes, and to write in the words that you do want, like, oh, endless cellular renewal, vitality, and non-decrepitude, and staying alive forever, right? Like, those are good ways to edit your genes. So what I'm talking about, edit your genes means edit your term paper. You become an ascended master when you edit your life. You get rid of all the typos, all the spelling mistakes, all the grammatical inconsistencies, and then you live forever. And this is what we are all here to do. And I'm happy to tell you, it's not something that is only like after many more lifetimes of refinement, we will get to do this. Or you got to have a baby, you got to refine your genes, and your genes go into your baby, and then your baby will get to be an ascended master. No, no. All of us, everyone who's here right now, from like a little tiny infant to a person who's 100 years old, we all get to do this right now, or the option is on the table. Some people will still choose to die and hit the membrane of death and have to circulate back around again. But I'm telling you, this allows you to rearrange the puzzle of your life. It's like a Rubik's Cube, where right now you're rearranged in a way so that you do not have all of the colors organized according to the side. But if you just twist and turn and shape and morph your genes, at a certain point you solve the puzzle. And when you solve the puzzle, that is like becoming an ascended master. So again, ascended master, this, I don't mean to say it is like someone that you should worship. It means it's like a grad student, a person who went to school, like you went to college, did the work, you learned, and then you graduated. And the other thing is to understand that if you have graduated, you do not need to stay in class. You don't stay in this level of reality. You don't stay in the level of reality where you chew up physical food and digest it in the cauldron of your belly and poop it out. You move to the level of reality where you now ingest light directly and do not need to have a physical container for consciousness as we define physical container for consciousness. So the very, like I'm just finishing up this particular lecture and broadcast and then move on to questions. Earth is transforming into this shape. That's what that painting is up there. Birth of the flying rainbow lasagna. Earth is changing from having a toroidal or donut-shaped energy field into having a flying rainbow lasagna-shaped energy field. This is what a lot of people know and understand or perceive as quote-unquote pole shift. Yes, pole shift is happening, but the pole shift is more analogous to turning inside out than just a flipping over kind of reversal. We're turning inside out, and it's not just the planet that is doing it. We are all cells, like we're like little beings that live on the epidermis of the planet. We are doing it too. So Earth herself is achieving the expanded format, moving into a higher dimensional state. When you move from a two-dimensional state, two-dimensional flat plane, into a three-dimensional state, you are folding reality into a higher dimension. What we are doing with the flying rainbow lasagna is folding our DNA and creating more possibilities for what we can experience. And this is what I say when I say we are artists of reality. As you begin to fold your own DNA, it's like, wait a minute, I can paint a different picture. Oh, even though ancestors have programmed into me these levels of disease or decrepitude, or even though society has programmed into me this expectation that I have to work hard and toil at a job and then, die at age 60, that is not the narrative structure that I have to follow. I want every one of us to flying rainbow lasagna and become completely expanded and free, because I don't want any of us to have to be slaves anymore. And the slavery is not just the slavery of mental limitations, it's the slavery to the social and economic construct within which we find ourselves embedded. The slavery to the concept that you have to work at a job and earn money in order to sustain yourself. We can use this in order to write a much better version of reality, because once you are able to ingest light directly and you do not need to use plants or animals as intermediaries that you digest in the cauldron of your belly, the entire economy shifts. Everything shifts. So we're in transition. I say we are giving birth, and this is birth on a cosmic scale. It's not necessarily something that happens in 1 minute. Be a little bit patient, but also understand that when we're giving birth here, you get to be informed. You're like the mom, and you've got your natural birth training. You know all about the breathing. You know all about what's happening in your body. This is what I'm giving you with this particular teaching today is the idea that you can know what is going on inside of your own body and navigate it better. So the idea is we are all trying to shift our chakras to be in alignment, or our energy centers, or our DNA, or our timelines to be in alignment with those central core possibilities that make each one of us an ascended master. And this also has to do with who's influencing us, those beings that live in the interstices, those occupiers of the interstices. Those are demons. Those are the beings that set up the intellectual, emotional, social, religious, and economic construct that we're trying to break free from. So now you understand how it is a radical activity inside of your own self to take your chakras that are aimed at the membrane of death and instead aim them at the wormhole, which is the exit out of here. Let me finish the recording, because recording more than an hour usually makes it too difficult to upload. So let me stop the recording.